So Jonathan, you used Holganix as I talked to you earlier about some of the things we could be talking about today. I was really blown away with the story you told me about that street where you were competing with TruGreen and how you were kind of going back and forth and who could have the best lawns and the landscape contractor you're working through. Can you tell us that story?
Well, basically, we do a lot of subcontract work. We've got about 30 landscapers that we actually do their applications for. And we had one in particular who was essentially the high-end provider in the area. And anything less than number one was not good enough for him. So we had a street of about 9 houses. We had 6 of them. TruGreen had 1 or 2. And, it was always a competition to keep that color. Who could have come the quickest out of the gate in the spring, and who can maintain the color, deeper, darker color, the longest. So it ended up basically them dictating to us to keep pushing the nitrogen levels up to try to get more color out of it. And it got to a point where we were so high, we were starting to have salt injury on the fescue, especially when we got to May, late April, May, when we get some 89 degree days. We would start to see some tip burn, and it became a teetering issue of safety and efficacy on what we were doing. So we've been able to basically reduce that amount by 70%, 60-70% on average, and have better color, less succulent growth. We've kind of leveled out the growth curve, so we're not getting that big flush and then it just crashes. We get more consistent color. We're actually coming out of the gate faster because we're putting Holganix out in December instead of putting a pound of nitrogen out, which was what we would used to do to try to help expedite the process in the spring. We now have gone to doing a Holganix application in December, and that's kind of helping bring that turf out of dormancy a little faster. Once we put about a quarter to a third of a pound of nitrogen on it in round 1 in February and early March, and we're out the door as green as we want to be.
Wow. And just for everybody's, because people are from all over the country, Jonathan, you're in North Carolina, basically Charlotte area?
We're Greensboro, North Carolina. So we're growing mostly tall fescue, maybe 10% Bermuda grass. Every once in a while we kill a centipede lawn just for the fun of it. and we're starting to see a lot of zoysia come in as well.
Okay. And your dormancy season starts when, and when does the grass come out of dormancy typically, just to put it in perspective?
Generally, we'll see a reduced growth up into December. When we start getting really heavy, sub freezing temperatures in January, February is when we'll go into more of a deep dormancy. Getting it out, generally we start to see it come out early March, April, depending on the microclimates, depending on the weather, obviously.
Sure.
But we can start to green them up late February, and that's where adding that extra nitrogen before Holganix, because it would help expedite it a little bit.
Right.
And so national companies, that's all they've got. So it gives us a competitive advantage to keep the nitrogen levels lower, but still get the same color response.
Yeah.
And actually, honestly, we're getting better color response.
And typically we see it last longer. We don't see the surge growth. So if you're mowing, you're not baling hay. And we're getting a healthier turf grass because we're not pushing it to grow at an abnormal rate. So we get less disease, we get less stress. Everything kind of works better. And by the way, gang, the reason that's working is because the Holganix Bio 800, we've got all of the biology going into the soil that's going to help convert nutrients into forms that are digestible by the plant, both nutrients that we apply, but also nutrients that are in the soil already that just aren't there and aren't available. And that goes for nitrogen as well as for phosphorus and potassium. It's estimated that 50% of the nitrogen we apply doesn't actually get used by the plant. It either gets tied up in the soil, washes away, or volatilizes. And by using the right biology paired with the fertilizer, almost all of that fertilizer goes to where we want it to go, which is the plant. We don't always see 70% reduction. That's something we do see. commonly with customers. Sometimes it's less than 70% reduction. It really comes down to soil type, turf type, and the program we're referencing. But in Jonathan's case, he went from like 1.25 pounds down to, I think he said, around 1/4 pound to 1/2 pound. So, and got a better result. So great story, Jonathan. Thanks for sharing it. Anything else you want to share on that topic there, John, before we get to roots?
Just to reiterate what you said, 70% was based on that particular street. Overall, as a company, we're about 60 to 65%.
Yeah.
And that's taking into account new customers. Customers have been with us for years. We don't have to add in extra stuff on new customers as often as we did before. But you're right. The biggest thing is we're getting the most efficiency out of the fertilizer we're using. We're getting probably the same amount of efficiency out of that 1/4 to 1/3 of a pound as we were out of a pound.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Because just letting it work.
Great point, Jonathan. Thanks for sharing it. Let's move from fertilizer to roots. It's kind of cool. You guys won we used to do the Holganix Roots for You competition every year. We'd have our customers from all over the country send us in pictures of their roots, and we would see who had the best roots from around the country. And in 2013, Jonathan's company won the roots competition for his category, and tall fescue rooting depth beyond 9 inches, which is pretty impressive. Jonathan, do you remember this? This was quite a few years ago.
Oh yeah. And I would add, if you look at that soil, that is some heavy compacted clay once you get past the first 2 inches.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you can definitely see that the soil structure changed there, and yet we still had roots pushing through that clay, which, look, if you have heavy compacted clay, the best way to long-term improve it is to start pushing roots through it. Roots are organic matter, and so we start pushing roots through the clay, we start getting more porosity in the clay, and we start getting more organic matter in the clay. But that's pretty cool picture. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jonathan. Anything else on roots, Jonathan? Oh, this is a specific customer's photo. I hadn't seen this one.
So I wanted to point this one out. This lawn is maintained on about 2.5 pounds of nitrogen a year.
Wow.
Organic. And, for the color that we've got here, the thickness of the turf, this picture was taken in May, right before their second application. This lawn had about 1/4 pound of N, a little bit of iron, and 3 ounces of Holganix in the first application.
Per 1,000 square feet.
Per 1,000 square foot.
Wow. And just to put this in perspective for everybody around the country, in this market, this is probably a 10-month growing market, something like that. We'd normally see lawn care programs in the 4 to 6 pounds per 1,000 for nitrogen. Is that right, John?
Yeah, we were at about 5.5 pounds before we started using Holganix. Now we're between 2.5 to 2 3/4, depending on the season.
Wow. Really cool. And you just don't get any prettier than that.
And most of that, honestly, that's coming in the 2 fall seeding apps.
Okay.
For the rest of the year, we don't get over 1/3 of a pound of N on any given app.
Neat. And benefit there is we get less stress, we get less disease. Obviously, we're spending less money on fertilizer. We're not pushing it. And we can get a more compact, denser lawn, which then leads to less weeds because we're pushing energy into lateral growth as opposed to vertical growth.
Exactly. And if you look at this one, and of course it's subjective, it doesn't look wet and succulent and just like it's out of control.
Right.
And that's and keep in mind that we're using Holganix year round. This lawn had probably had 2 or 3 years of it at this point consistently. And it is something that, builds up in the soil. It takes time. It's not an overnight process. But if you buy into the program and you stick with it, the results will be there.
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, every time Jonathan says Holganix, unless we say otherwise, he's talking about the Bio 800 products. We do have a whole portfolio under Holganix, but Bio 800 was the first Holganix product. So a lot of times we just kind of divert to saying that's Holganix. Now, Jonathan, tell me what's going on in this picture. We can really see the density of this turf. Tell us what we're looking at.
So this was a kill off. The customers didn't have irrigation. They wanted to switch to Bermuda grass. So the picture on the left is May the 1st with us seeding it in a improved seeded Bermuda grass. The picture on the right is May the 15th.
Wow.
Now, The fertilizer that we put on it was Holganix that day.
Man. So give us the time frame again.
The picture on the left is May the 1st. The picture on the right is May the 15th.
2 weeks. That's unbelievable. And the only thing you put down was Holganix Bio 800.
That's all we put down. We came back, actually, the reason I was on May the 15th was to do the fertilization app.
Wow. And
so if you'll notice, I'm sorry, Barrett, the lawn beyond where it's cut was seeded that day as well.
Okay, right.
There were two side by side that were seeded at the same time.
Yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful thing. And I'll tell you, we do see enhanced germination when you use the Bio 800 in any establishment, whether that's a new seed, new sod, new tree, shrub, flower, you name it. If you want to establish something better, watering it in with the Bio 800 product line will get us better rooting, get us quicker germination. Usually we see germination within just a couple of days, and we can usually beat a standalone starter fertilizer by 7 to 14 days in germination. Different turf types, different results, but boy, this picture tells 1,000 words. Thanks, Jonathan. That's pretty cool.
And I was actually pretty impressed with that. And we did have a lot of rain, but it came up thick, even, clean. Neither of these customers had done anything prior to that application of Holganix.
Wow. So we've heard about fertilizer rate reduction, which has given us all kinds of benefits. We've heard about your root improvement with the Holganix Roots for You competition you won that year. Here we're looking at establishment on new seed. Love these examples, Jonathan.